Welcome to Allie's Attic, where you never know what kind of surprise you'll find in my attic. I'm your host, Allie, and today my surprise is a singer-songwriter from the northwest of England whose music spans the genres from folk through folk rock and progressive folk to folk punk. Please welcome John Reed. Hi, John.
Hello, how are you doing?
I am doing great. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Yeah, it's a mild day today. We've had a few rainy, very cold days, but now we're just back to the normal misery of the Christmas period,
Yeah,
where
it's
the weather is also always really dull. So we need some music to brighten it up.
there you go. Yeah, I've heard it's really dull over there. I want to get over there. It's one of my bucket list things. We're having our normal cold temperatures. It was really nice till yesterday, and now it's not nice anymore.
Yeah,
Are
yeah.
you ready for Christmas?
Yeah, we've had a strange end to the year because I've done a lot of business traveling. We've done a few gigs. And my son contracted a crazy illness just
Oh,
from a scratch or a bite, and he ended up in hospital for six
oh
weeks
my
and
God.
6 weeks convalescing, and he had to cancel a number of shows he was doing and stuff like that. So I'm currently driving him to work as well as running my own business and trying to run a band as well. So
Oh
it's
my
fucking
goodness.
crazy. But
Yeah.
we've come out the other end of that now, and I think we'll probably enjoy next week. Just to take our foot off the gas and enjoy doing a few things. I'm
Yeah.
also I'm recording tomorrow as well because we're putting together we've been putting together the Madness EP for well, I first wrote it in May 2016, I think the first song, and so tomorrow we're finally getting around to finishing it all off and mixing it, and there's just one more song I've got to do, which I wrote a couple of days ago, and we're recording that first and then mixing, and then we're going to release it. So
Wow.
it's my pleasure that you are the first radio station in the world to play the electric version of Madness. It's probably my favourite version of it. I think we've got about 4 or 5 versions now. It's crazy the way things go.
Yeah. Well, you have been very busy. I'm so glad your son is better, and I wish you a very Merry Christmas. I'm finally ready, kind of. So John, I mean, you have been doing this for years. You have been part of some of the most amazing things. Like, did you go to Woodstock?
No, I didn't. Gosh, I
Okay,
wish I had.
okay.
No, no, we just bunked off school to watch the film.
There we go. Because when it said that you skipped school to go, I was like, what? They went to Woodstock? Oh my
Uh,
God.
Well, Kieran and I hitched to many festivals around the UK, but we never quite got to hitching an airplane ride. So, no, we were too young for Woodstock, but we saw it in the afternoon when we were supposed to be at school, sat there in our school uniforms in the dark. Uh, Kieran's been a friend of mine for a very long time, since school days.
Hmm.
And when we started this musical journey a couple of years ago, um, I asked him if he'd play the guitar with me, and he did. And then last year, for the first time in 44 years, he and I got on a stage together for the very first time. It was quite an amazing experience, and he stayed with it. It's been a terrific journey, and
Wow.
it goes back a long, long way to our teenage when I used to go around and play Led Zeppelin albums and Pink Floyd albums and other albums in his attic room. It was actually his sister's room, but it was a cool room, so we used to sit up there and um, have the joysticks on and listen to progressive rock music mainly.
Yeah.
So we've been friends for a very long time. It's fabulous to have him on board with this. It really is.
Well, that's fantastic. Now, let's talk about when you started. You started when you were 15 years old.
Yeah, it's a strange story, really, because I didn't really start writing songs seriously until I picked up my sitar, which is just a few years ago, 2014. Up until that time, I'd been picking up guitars since the age of 15 when my mum and dad bought me my first guitar, which is here on the wall. My Spanish guitar, I still play it.
Mhm.
And Yeah, they bought me a guitar because I pestered them to. I was very lucky because I was one of nine children, or I am one of nine children, and they spent £17 on this guitar, which was a fortune in the 1970s, the early 70s.
Hmm.
That would have been 1973. And so I played the guitar. I learned. Kieran was a great guitarist, and as soon as I met him, we used to mess around quite a bit together. And I could never get as good as him. And it used to be, a source of frustration, really. But then, I went off to university in Norwich, which is the southeast of England, and one of the most beautiful cities in the world, let alone in the UK. Much underrated place. And I got involved with the entertainments committee there, as I'd been involved with a sixth form committee with Kieran, where we put on bands in Blackpool, and we gave them the proceeds to charitable organisations. The problem is we made so much money doing this that we were in danger of getting taxed, and the only way to get around it was to book bigger and bigger bands, so we'd waste all our money. And so we started, and I was 16, 17 years old, so we were into music at that time and hitching to the festivals. We saw Pink Floyd at Nebworth. We saw that was in 1975. We also saw that same year, we went to the Reading Festival and saw an absolutely fabulous lineup of varying bands, one of whom was Dr. Feelgood. And Dr. Feelgood, real fantastic, direct style of rock and roll was, I believe, what really set light to the punk movement in the UK and really gave it confidence to move to what it did a year later.
Yeah.
And by that time, I was down at Norwich University, part of the entertainments committee, and within a short time, I think the first year I was just a dog's body, and the second year I stage managed the events for probably about 3 or 4 years after that. And that meant basically that I had to stay up until ridiculous hours of the morning and not do my university work and drink too much beer and all the rest of it. But at the time, if you can imagine going from the Jack Bruce band, Nazareth, in a 900-seater hall, Roy Harper and Trigger, some of the biggest artists, certainly UK artists that we had. And we went from that within 6 months to punk rock. And it was astonishing. In fact, it was less than 6 months because December the 4th, 2016, I think it was, the Sex Pistols, the Clash, the Damned, and Johnny Thunder's Heartbreakers were all on the same bill, the Stiffs tour. And we were actually set up. We set up with their road crew on the day, and the vice chancellor of the university pulled the gig because the national media had become terrified of punk rock and what young people can do. And I have a really funny story about that because it was either that Christmas or a couple of months later. We went to see one of the top folk bands over here, Steel Eye Span. You may have heard of them.
Mm-hmm.
And Steel Eye played the ABC Theatre in Blackpool, which is a sit-down theatre. And they're a very dancey band. They have some fabulous music. But when they get dancey, everybody gets up and dances. And so they got into the more lively stuff after the first half of the set, and everybody got up and started to dance. And the stewards kept sitting us down again. So it became a race between the fans and the stewards. We were running around all over the place, skipping around the audience, dancing. And the next day in the local press, punk rockers had invaded a folk gig. And so they were getting it so badly skewed. And all punk was a necessary step into reality. It was a bunch of bands, a bunch of young bands coming out and saying, we're not going to listen to this 10-minute stuff. We just want to give you our views on the world direct, and we're going to give it straight in the face. It's honest, it's raw, it's energetic, and what a time to be involved. Because we had the Ramones in that hall, 900 people, and the Ramones in the hall. We had just about everybody you can imagine. and it was the most exciting time of my life.
Yeah,
Those few years were absolutely terrific.
I would imagine. My God. Oh, to be with you through all of that would be amazing. So like protest and political themes have always been part of your life, and that's kind of how you write your songs.
Yeah, it is. I don't set out to be ranting about stuff. I do rant because sometimes I get very angry about things. But I think since I started writing songs seriously a few years ago, I've been more considered. And rather than rant on paper on Facebook, I've largely left Facebook now because I found that it was changing people's personalities, good people who I know. Um, and they were just being really, really, well, they were saying things that they wanted to say because they could. And I think you've got to be more restrained than that. I think you've got to be respectful, first of all, and take into account that whether or not somebody's view is the same as yours, they still have a right to it. And so when I sort of started backing off, I started to write these songs, and honestly, it starts by me being upset or angry about something, or an emotion that really triggers, and I go away and write a song, and that's how it started. I'll tell you the story of the sitter because that's probably the sort of fulcrum of all of this.
Yes,
I
yes.
went. It was December 2013, so that's almost 4 years ago to the day. I went to a famous music store here in Manchester called Johnny Roadhouse to buy some strings for my son's bouzouki. You have to hear my son's work, by the way. He is really special. And I know fathers and parents generally would always say that this guy's voice is something else. So I'll send you some of his stuff after we speak because you need to hear him. But I went to buy these bouzouki strings, and on the wall was what I thought was a 10-string bouzouki. And so I picked it off the wall and started playing it, and it kind of played me. It was astonishing. And I thought, this is so much nicer than a guitar. It feels better, it's easy to play, it's resonant, it's choral, it's beautiful. So I started asking about it, and they said, no, that's not a bouzouki, that's a cittern, spelled Cittern. And a cittern is a 10-string instrument, where unlike the bouzouki, the bottom strings are the same, they're not octave, so you don't get a thin one and a thick one, they're exactly the same thickness. And it provides a kind of resonance that you don't hear from anything else. You can use that resonance like you use feedback to create a sort of harmonic sound behind what you're doing. And so I couldn't really go home and say to my wife, well, I went out to buy some strings for my son, and I came back with a £500 instrument because that wouldn't have gone down too well at Christmas. And so I thought, I'll save up, I'm going to buy one of these. And so 6 months later, I went back to Johnny Roadhouse and ordered an Ashbury sitter. And the Ashbury is designed here in the UK by a guy whose name escapes me, but made in Vietnam.
Yeah.
There are two funny things about this, because when this thing arrived, it arrived in its tuning, and I started writing songs in that tuning. The following Christmas, my son bought me a book of cittern chords and tunings, and there were about 30 of them, and that wasn't one of them. so I'd written an entire album by then in entirely a wrong tuning and almost entirely a form of G tuning. So that was, the basis of Morescape. That one instrument, and the Morescape album was all written on that instrument.
Well, and you play it like it's a 10 string, and you play it more like a rhythm guitar.
Yeah, I do. I think initially, very much so. But I think that when you hear the new album next year, you'll hear me branching out a bit more. I've become more confident as you do with instruments. You start to forget your inhibitions and you just try things. And what really helps me there is the fact that I work with a bunch of musicians who they're just, well, they mean the world to me. They're absolutely amazing. Because they come with their ideas. They're not afraid to put things forward, and that gives me the confidence because I've never really, apart from in business life, where I stand up and talk to hundreds of people sometimes, and I train people who don't speak my language and all this kind of stuff. Um, it, it's never been. I've never been comfortable standing up on stage, but with these people behind me, it feels like we're a bunch of friends on stage, just doing this for all the right reasons, and it's a collaborative, wonderful journey that we're on. So yeah, it's a kind of it's a rhythm guitar. You can play it lead, you can play it folky. I've played slide sitter there's a song called She Cries I sent to you, and there's no, it's not that one. It's on the Smile where I first played slide sitter, and I played some on some of my son's recordings that we did a couple of weeks ago over at the Crib Studio, Hey Jamal's Crib Studio, which is about 20 minutes from here. And so lots of stories come from that. The sitar is a Renaissance instrument. It's a Celtic instrument. It goes back to the Middle Ages, and it's actually the forerunner of the guitar. There are 10-string sitars, there are 12-string sitars, there are also apparently 8-string sitars, and it goes on because the whole mandola family, whether it's a sitar, a bouzouki, a mandola, a mandolin, they all sort of crossbreed.
Mm-hmm.
And you end up with different sounds, but they're marvelous instruments.
Now let's talk about your backing band, the Folded Arms. Who is all? I can name them off because I have them in front of me, but I'm going to let you tell me who is all part of the Folded Arms.
Yeah, well, the way the Folded Arms happened is also quite funny because when I picked up my sitar, I just re-met a friend of mine called Rajendra Jadeja. Jad and I were at university together in Norwich, and when Kieran came down to the same university the following year, he got to know Jad well as well. So we're a bunch of friends from 30 or 40 years ago, re-meeting. And so Jad and I met together for the first time in 33 years. It felt like 33 minutes. And after about 6 months, I'd gone on this musical journey, and I phoned him up and I said, Jad, do you fancy playing tablet to my sitar? I just want to experiment with something. So I drove all the way down to his house near London, which is about 3.5 hours from here. And we sat and we messed about, and I've still got those recordings on video. And it is astonishing what came out. And I just said, Jad, would you record with me? And he was delighted to. Now, this is a guy who's classically trained. He's never played folk, he's never played rock, he's never played punk, and he's taken it to it like a duck to water. He's a firm friend, a lovely guy. And, I wrote a song, Dry the Life, and coincidentally, it's not about Jad, but Dry the Life is about world water shortage. And when Jad was a kid, he lived in Kenya with his family, and he had to walk miles for water every day. So it kind of came home to roost. That whole story sort of came back to, it almost enhanced the whole Dry the Life experience. So Jad is a university friend. Kieran's a school friend and university friend. And Kieran tells me as it is. The wonderful thing is about Kieran is that if I'm doing something that he doesn't like, he tells me. But I do the same in return as well. So we've got this great relationship. It's been going on for years, and long may it continue. Kieran introduced me when we were recording Moorscape. I think we all felt, both Kieran, myself, Ali, Jad to an extent, we all felt that it sounded very male as an album, and that's good, but the song needed something more than just my voice. And so he said he knew a girl who worked in the same office as him, and she'd love to sing on it. So introducing Emma Perry, Emma came along and added the most sublime backing vocals to the Moorscape album, especially the title track itself. Just amazing stuff. Mm-hmm. And it took what was a decent album to another level, and I was very happy with the end result. And then during the course of that same year, I was doing some business down south. There's an office I work with in Peterborough, and that's to the south of Leicester, where Mr. Matt Steady lives. And Matt and I had met on Twitter, and we'd messed about a bit and talked to each other. And I just said, "Do you fancy meeting up? I've got an idea. I'd quite like some violin on some of my work." And so Matt and I met in a service station on the motorway near to where he lives. And the funny thing about that was that the night before I'd slept in a hotel room which had one setting on the heating, and it was absolutely tropical. It didn't matter whether I opened the window. This was the summer. Opened the window. It was awful. And so I went to a meeting the next day, and we were having a photo shoot at this business meeting. So I ended up with a rash on my face. So I had to borrow some foundation to put on my face, and then did the photo shoot, did the business meeting, and then went herring up the motorway to meet Matt. So the first time I met Matt Steady, he must have thought I looked a right freak, because I was there with foundation on my face, and he was very polite. He didn't say anything. I realised, I said, "Matt, I've just realised I must look like David Guest." And so Matt has just been an absolute light. He like Jad, he's classically trained. I'm not classically trained, and these guys are happy to come along and play my music live and on recordings and stuff. And they have so much fun. Matt sort of came into the group probably a little bit earlier than we met Kate, because he did some work on some of the Morescape album, I think. I can't remember. Maybe it was a bit later than that. But Matt came in and he just slotted in straight away as though we'd known him for centuries. And what a fabulous, fabulous family man he is. And so that's my plug, Matt, if you're listening. And his music is terrific. He's a great artist. He plays, for me, bass, violin, and uilleann pipes. And he's going to be coming up in January, hopefully, to finish off one or two of my tracks. And then, absolutely, last but not least, and probably not even last, is Kate Ferris. Kate is a good friend and singing partner of Emma. Emma and Kate are chic, and chic do ABBA and 80s disco music to a backing track around the northwest of England. And their harmonies are absolutely stunning. Kieran said, "Come along and see us." There was a Pride event over in our hometown, so we stood there and we just listened to them belting out all these fabulous tunes with not a single drop of harmony. And he'd suggested that Kate should come along and sing on the Drive a Life album, and so Kate did. Again, these are just amazing people. They make me laugh. Kate is also an organizer, and so she comes up with ideas. They all do. Everybody does. But she comes up with some great ideas. And one of them recently was, I have a song on Morescape called Dim Blue Light, and we were about to do it live at quite a decent gig here in the UK. And Kate said, "Do you think we should do part of the chorus a cappella?" And we looked at it thinking, we can't do that. And we did. We did it in the rehearsal studio, and when we did it live, it was just terrific. It went really well. So now we have her contribution to that. Her other contribution was when we were recording their parts, Emma's and Kate's part for Drive a Life. We were sat in a room, and Emma had a dreadful cold, and so she couldn't take some of the vocals that I wanted her to take, and so Kate stepped in and did the second verse for a song called She Cries, which added extra meaning to that song as well, because it's about the low-level abuse of women. I'm not talking about the stuff we're hearing about the Weinsteins in this world, but in relationships, people can be very dismissive. Men can travel around the world like I do and come back and just not really appreciate what you have enough back home. And it's not a self-portrait, this. It's just something I've seen in family and friends, and in people who have been hurt by it. So that part of the reason why I wrote the song, but the other part is that there was I in Ali Karim's studio. Ali Karim, by the way, is Hey Jamal. So he is one and the same. Either that or he's two people. I don't know. Uh, we met. I'll tell you how I met him another time, a little later. But he's a fabulous addition to the group as well. He's one of the best producers in the country. He's worked with just about every major producer. He was in a band called Fear of Music, an indie band called Fear of Music, at the age of 14. And they were signed to Sony within a year. And so he's been there, done it. Been to every festival, supported the Manic Street Preachers and many other bands. He's done Glastonbury and everything. And I end up meeting him by complete chance and becoming firm friends with him. But Ali one day said to me, he said, I love your songs. They're all stories. You're very passionate about the environment, about politics and so on. You have very strong views, but you also listen to people. But I never hear you writing about your emotions. And so I said, all right then. And that night I wrote She Cries.
Mm-hmm.
Because going back to what I said earlier, is something either challenges me or upsets me, and I write a song, and it can be instant. Most of the songs that you hear have been largely written in half an hour.
Wow.
And it's because that's the way I write, it's the way I draw, it's the way I write reports, everything is just, it's a stream of consciousness. It comes out, and it either works or it doesn't. And we've only had to dump 2 or 3 songs. It's quite amazing.
That is amazing. Now, let's talk about the launch of the Madness EP.
Yeah.
Now, it's inspired by a story that I'd love you to tell me about.
Yeah, the Madness, let's rewind to February 2003. We went down onto, we were two of 2 million people that walked around London to protest against Tony Blair taking our country on the coattails of George Bush into the Iraq War. It was senseless, it was stupid, and we're wreaking the aftermath of that now with the various terrorist atrocities that have been meted out around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And here in Manchester, Manchester has been hit twice while I've been living here. Once by a guy who blew himself up and killed 22 people at an Ariana Grande concert.
Yes.
On the 22nd of May last year.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one was the Irish Republican Army, who in 1996 exploded 3 tons of Semtex in the middle of Manchester. The difference being that they gave a warning of 15 minutes, and so the city centre was cleared. So we're not immune. We're not immune to that kind of thing. We're quite used to security and things. But I became increasingly tired of seeing Syria, Iraq, Libya, Tunisia, Egypt, all of these places falling apart, essentially because of greed. Everybody wants the oil wealth and the mineral reserves and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And so the world falls apart because of a few greedy people. I know that's a very simplistic view, but I didn't want to be part of that. And so I was sat reading my lefty newspaper, The Guardian, which is kind of more centre now than left. But there was a story in there about a Palestinian family who lived their entire lives under the level of a window ledge because they were terrified of taking a sniper's bullet. And coincidentally, Matt, at the same time, wrote a song called The Last Piano in Palestine. Neither of us knew the other was doing that, what we were doing. And so the madness came out of that, and I tried to put myself in the shoes of somebody who was bombed in fear of death or maiming, in fear of watching their children go to school and not come back again. It really pulled my heartstrings. I got very angry, and I wrote the madness. And I wrote it on a black acoustic guitar, story coming up, a black acoustic guitar that I've had since 1978. And that guitar has come into its own because it's still my favourite acoustic guitar. And since then, we've carried on to other versions. But I'll tell you the story about the acoustic guitar first, because when I was at university putting on all these bands and things, we had a visiting band from the southwest of England, and at the time they were called the Vegetable Plot. They also called themselves Home Service, but then another band took that name, so they couldn't keep that. They were a great band, and they might as well have been a Genesis impersonation band.
Mm.
But the lead singer was a guy called Gary, and he was a lovely guy. But he always used to pose in this creamy white suit, both on stage and off stage. And Gary, I was talking to him about a 12-string Hoyer German guitar that I had and couldn't actually play very well. And so he said, "Do you mind if I take a look at it?" And so he came up to my room and he said, "Yeah, no, it's fine. I love that guitar. Can I swap it with my Black Eco?" So I looked at his Black Eco, played it. I said, "Yeah, I can play that." So Gary took away my guitar and I took away his. And to seal the deal, we went into the student bar and I bought him a pint of beer. The problem is with pints of beer in students' bars that they don't come in glass glasses, they come in plastic glasses. And Gary, being macho man, when I gave him his beer, he squeezed the glass tight and it went all over his cream suit.
Oh no. That is too funny. Okay, so we now know what the Madness EP is about. Now, let's talk about the one that's going to be released in June of 2018, The Breeding Ground of Vile.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? The Breeding Ground of Vile is it's essentially a double album of protest songs, and you know, protest songs are very sort of umbrella term, really, because a lot of my songs are songs to make people think about the world around them, and not to accept some of the rubbish that we're told by politicians and other people in authority. You've got to challenge things in the world. It doesn't mean you need to throw petrol bombs or anything like that. It means you have to challenge. And so my songs are a challenge that really are there to make people think and to stir thought and some kind of a reaction in somebody, whether negative or positive. I don't mind. I don't mind if people agree with me or disagree with me, because that's their right, as it is mine to write the songs. And so what I've done is I've separated the two CDs into one that is going to be called Probably Speaking Out, and that's a more acoustic, folky album with a twist. And the second one will be in your face folk punk, because that's what I want to do. And behind all of this, I couldn't do this if it wasn't for Ali's skill in production. He's not only a fantastic producer, he's a great friend to me and my son. And his production, his ear, is sensational. And he can turn, he also knows what I'm going to do. He is intuitively puts in exactly what I want. And if I could actually play you the song in my head before we'd actually recorded the thing, it would sound very similar, because he picks things up so well. And so even the folk punk stuff has got a mood about it, and there's a common mood throughout the whole thing. And we're really excited because it's going to be released on my 60th birthday next year.
Oh my goodness.
So, and you know, we feel 18 years old, but we're sort of still doing this stuff. And age doesn't matter. We just get on and do it.
Exactly.
Because we love doing it. And as part of that process, and can I just come back slightly to the madness? Also on Twitter, we met two of the most fabulous people in the world, a husband and wife folk duo from Milton, Nova Scotia, called the Lewinskis. So hello to Kristen and Matthew, if you're listening. We spoke on Twitter for about a year, and at one point I listened to their music and I just thought, I'm organising a festival in May next year. We took 7 months to organise this festival, where we had in the end 7 bands in 5 hours, and we had an afternoon of music demonstrations on different weird instruments and so on, jam sessions, you name it, we had it. And I said the icing on the cake would be if I could get the Lewinskis to come over. So I said, if you pay the airfares, I'll sort the accommodation, the transport, the food, and the fun. And Kristen was the person I was talking to at the time, and she later said to me, people were saying to me, "Are you crazy? Are you going to go over there to see this sort of 60-year-old guy who plays folk music? Are you really going to go over on a whim and see these weird people?" And she did, and her and Matthew walked out of the airport, and it was instant. Lovely people. Um, and as well as doing gigs with them that time, and they are coming back this next year in May. They're coming back to the UK for a tour I'm putting together. Um, they also spent a day recording with me. And on the Madness EP, there are two songs which are versions of songs that are on either The Breeding Ground of Vile or Moorscape, one of each. And Kristen's accordion work on both is fabulous. Matthew's guitar work is so precise that in the end, I decided that the version of the Madness that I'm putting on The Breeding Ground of Vile is them playing and me singing. So I play no instruments on the version which will be on The Breeding Ground of Vile. And they came over, firm friends with everybody. They slotted in straight away. We had an absolute ball. And when they left the country, I was quite emotional. I thought, it's really sad that they've gone home. And so I wrote Ocean on that day. So there's the two stories, Madness and Ocean.
That is awesome.
Delighted to have them back next year. And one day I'll come to Canada and play there as well.
That would be fantastic. Get a tour going here. That would be wonderful to see everybody. Now, because you've been doing this for so long, John, and you've seen so many different bands, you've worked with different bands, and now you're doing your thing, which I love. If you had any kind of advice to give a new artist that was starting out today, what kind of advice would you give them?
It's probably very simple. It came to me when, I realized the value of working with all these people. There are two things. The first thing is collaboration. We can all go in our different directions and try and do our own thing and be unique and so on. And sometimes that works, but sometimes you need help. And just as, in business, I can't do everything, so I pull in experts who can. I can't play the violin like Matt Steady. I can't play the tabla like Jad can. I can't sing like Emma and Kate can. And I can't play guitar like Kieran can. He's been playing on the pub circuit for a long time in different bands, and he's very proficient. So I need these people, and I need their ideas. So the first point is that work with people who are prepared to collaborate and have that spirit of collaboration. And the second is don't be too prescriptive. Because when we have either rehearsal or recording sessions, I've generally sent the band the songs in advance, and I just say, just come up with what you come up with. You're better at what you do than I am, so just bring it to the table. And if it's wrong, we won't use it. But if it's right, which it always is, we will. And honestly, they come prepared. They are prepared to collaborate, and they really get stuck in, and they add a quality to my music that I just wouldn't have without their input. So thanks to all the Folded Arms. They are wonderful people.
That is awesome. That's great advice as well. What two songs are we going to hear from you? We've already talked about them, but what two songs are we going to hear?
Well, I selected The Madness because the EP we are actually mixing the EP tomorrow, and we are not stopping until it's mixed, and then we'll start putting it out there on the airways. The Madness because it's a song that describes one of the terrible things in life, which is people not being able to live their lives normally. And Ocean because it's a song about the fabulous relationship that's been struck up across the Atlantic between the Lewinskys and all of us, and hopefully we'll bring some more Canadian musicians into the fray as well in the next few years. We're not in a rush to do anything, but Ocean is very much about those. It's a wave across the ocean to them, and I know they're waving back. And they're lovely people, and I felt that it was necessary to tell them that. And so that's Ocean too.
That is so sweet. And yeah, it would be wonderful to have more Canadian artists working with you. Now, you can buy your songs online as well as your website, which is www.waldo.com. It's spelled Waldeaux. It'll be up on my website. People can just click on it, it'll go directly to your website. They can discover even more of your music, they can read your blog, they can find out everything about you. Um, and thank you. This has been wonderful just listening to you tell me all these stories. It's just been beautiful. I totally appreciate it. And John, thank you so much for coming on. And don't be a stranger. Anytime you want to come back on, you know the door's open.
I'll be happy to do that, and a good time might be when the new album comes out. I'll send you a copy so that you can have a listen and select the songs for yourself.
Perfect. That would be perfect. Well, thank you so much, John.
Thank you, Ali, and thank you for the opportunity and for the excellent chat. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Yes, me as well. And thank you for joining me on Allie's Attic. Keep checking my website because you never know what kind of surprises you'll find in my attic. Cheers.